Welcome back to Firestorm Games, and in this video we're going to be looking at some of the Shadespire expansion sets. The first of all being the new undead force, the Sepulchral Guard that we have here. Now in the set we get 7 plastic fighters altogether. We also get 7 fighter cards, 29 Sepulchral Guard and 31 universal upgrade, ploy and objective cards. I'll be looking at both of those in this video. So let's start off by looking at the cards. So here we have all the fighter cards that we get in the Sepulchral Guard set. Now this is the largest warband with 7 members altogether. So far the largest that we've seen, at least maybe until the Skaven show themselves. So basically these guys are very numerous, but they are also very, very fragile. In fact, they're probably the weakest ones that we've seen so far. They've got fairly low health, a single defense dice. The attacks aren't particularly strong, but they do have one key strength, and that lies with the Sepulchral Warden himself. So basically he has a special action which allows him to place a friendly fighter that was taken out of action on a starting hex in your territory and remove all their wound counters. So basically, if one of your other fighters gets knocked out, you can return them to the battlefield. So death isn't the end for this particular warband. In addition to that, if I just put this to one side, all of these other members of the warband, they get inspired if you actually return them to the battlefield, which actually makes them a slightly more formidable. So we see here we've got 1, 2, 2 for the white blade there. That goes to 1, 3, 2. And we also gain an additional point of speed, and everything else pretty much stays the same. So we have a kind of a range of different characters. Some of them have got special abilities. So for example, the Harvester has a whirling scythe, targets all adjacent enemy fighters, and you roll for each one. I think the 3 petitioners are just like generic ones. I don't think they have any special abilities. And then we also have the Prince of Dust as well, who is a slightly more him and also the champion are slightly more deadly, slightly more valuable fighters on the battlefield. Now the Sepulchral Warden also has another action which allows him to choose 2 other friendly fighters and make move actions with those fighters. This does not allow a fighter to move twice in this phase. So basically you can actually make your force very mobile in a turn. And considering if you combine this with the other 3 remaining actions, you can move a sizable proportion of your warband in a single phase, which is great for picking up those early objectives. So that's the fighter cards looked at. Let's move on to some of the objective, ploy and upgrade cards. And here we have the remaining 60 cards that we get in this set. Now all of these cards are unique to the set, you won't find them anywhere else, and we get a set of objective, ploy and upgrade cards which are generic and can be used in any warband. So it's worth picking this set up even if you don't have any interest in these models, but to be honest it really is a very interesting warband to play indeed. So we have some sets of objective, upgrades and ploy cards as well down here which are specific to the Sepulchral Guard. Now as you would imagine, a lot of these actually focus on the resilience, not in the sense of their defense value, but the fact that these guys can keep coming back. So we have things like Fatal Strike. So make this attack action during an attack action that takes this fighter out of action. So basically if you upgrade this card to your champion and he dies, then you can basically perform an additional attack just before he goes to the battlefield, but his chances are he's going to come back later on as well. So it's kind of like a death throw. We also have things like, there's a few more in here which will also help, I believe, with so we've got +1 wounds there, but I think mainly the ploy cards are the ones that actually really help you out in terms of making sure that your forces are coming back from the dead. So you have things like Restless Dead, place a friendly fighter that's taken out of action other than the Sepulchral Warden on a starting territory in your hex, which actually means that if you combine this with the Sepulchral Warden, you can bring back 3 of your fighters in a single turn, which is very interesting indeed. We've got Grasping Hands, which basically allows you to support fighters on the battlefield with fighters that are off the battlefield. So basically it's essentially the forces, the skeletons aren't quite dead and they're holding down the fighters to slow them down. We'll have Dance Macabre, which is any friendly fighters that make a move action in the next activation can move 1 additional hex. It helps to speed things up a little bit. And also my favourite, which is Bone Shrapnel. Basically, when a skeleton gets killed, he explodes and he can do 1 damage to the fighter that took him out as well. So very interesting ploy cards that we can use there. Similar kind of thing for some of these objective cards as well. Some of them are basically based around if all of your surviving fighters are inspired. So to actually that happen, you need to make sure that they've all died at some point. So yeah, some very nice artwork on these cards, pretty much all geared around the undead as well. So if I just flick through these quickly again, so you can see some of the really nice artwork that we got on here as well. So that's all the cards we looked at. Let's look at the miniatures themselves. The Sepulchral Guard consists of 7 individual miniatures, and each of these has their own unique sculpt. These 7 fighters are broken down into individual groups. So first of all, we get 3 petitioners, which are your general run-of-the-mill skeletons, and these would fit really nicely alongside some of your other Age of Sigmar skeletons. Next up, the miniatures that we have, the other 4 remaining miniatures, have slightly more interesting and unique sculpts. They have the Sepulchral Warden, who is the warband, and so is equipped with slightly heavier armour. The champion reminds me slightly of a Grave Guard warrior, but still has those skeletal features of the general run-of-the-mill skeletons as well. The Prince of Dust is pretty much the same as well. He is wearing a crown. And finally, we have probably my favourite of them all, which is the Harvester, who's equipped with a large scythe and also a hood. Very kind of Grim Reaper in his appearance. So these miniatures are all snap fit, which means that you can basically get them off the sprue and onto the battlefield really quickly. It took me around about 20 to 25 minutes to get all of these miniatures assembled. Now another great thing about this particular kit is it actually comes with pre-coloured plastic. The bone colour makes them easily identifiable on the battlefield without needing to paint them. Now these miniatures are also really well cast. They have tons of detail on them and look really fantastic. In fact, I would say that these are probably my favourite out of all the warbands that we've seen for Shadespire so far. So I'm going to continue assembling these miniatures, and then we can take a look at the finished warband. So here we have the 7 assembled warband members of the Sepulchral Guard. Now out of all of the warbands that we've looked at so far, the Sepulchral Guard really are the most interesting when it comes to their rules. The ability to bring back your own fighters once they've been killed really sets this warband apart from the others, at least in tactical wise anyway. Your opponents are really going to have to change the way they choose to fight you, because taking out your forces early in the game doesn't mean they'll be dead for long. So if you're interested in picking up a set of these, the RRP is £17.50. However, they are available on the Firestorm Games web store for £15.75, and I'll include a link to their page in the description below. Now these expansions that we're seeing for Shadespire really are reasonably priced, considering that you get 7 fighters in this set, plus all of the cards you need to play them in Shadespire. You really can't complain about the cost, especially when you consider that some independent characters for Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40k are around about a similar price. The fact that these miniatures don't need to be painted and are really easy to assemble makes this an excellent starting point for anyone who's new to miniature wargaming. And so that concludes our look at the Sepulchral Guard. We just want to say a huge thank you for tuning in with us today and watching this video, and we hope to see you again on Firestorm Games.